Hi, tourpreneurs, and welcome back to another episode of the Tourpreneur Travel Business Podcast. Every week, we bring somebody interesting and exciting working in the tours and activities space, and we highlight their story and what they're up to. Today's guest is Benjamin Sann from Tour Optima. Ben, welcome to Tourpreneur.
Thank you.
So I am joined with Chris Torres, Peter Syme, my partners in crime. And Ben, we're familiar with what you've been up to, but for our audience, I was wondering if you could tell us your sort of elevator pitch of what Tour Optima is and what it's doing in our industry.
Sure. We believe that communication lies at the heart of the customer journey in tourism, both for day and multi-day. So we serve to facilitate the communication between guests, drivers, guides, coordinators, office staff across multiple regions, multiple roles, to make sure that the tour is a seamless experience and everyone remains in sync.
So I remember first meeting you at an arrival conference, and unbeknownst to me, you had actually been a customer of mine before I even met you when you, I think, purchased the tour technology course that I created years ago to help the kind of tour industry understand all of the different tech tools out there. I'm wondering if you could just begin with your journey of what you've learned as you've thought about building in our space, building a communications platform. What are the pain points that you've discovered along the way?
Sure. When I read that initial packet and looked at how operators distribute documents to their clients, location sharing, itinerary, photos, all of these are just various forms of communication that need to be timed differently, whether it's pre-trip documents, information that might lead up to the tour, information delivered on the tour, and then information such as surveys and tips delivered after the tour. These are all different forms of the same challenge. And a lot of the tools that you had showcased in that packet that I purchased were in pursuit of these goals. And there were a whole bunch of different tools that operators needed to adopt and then deliver and remember to send at different times. And a lot of what we've learned is how do we take that entire customer journey and automate that for an operator and deliver that information that those guests need when they need it via the channels that those guests are currently on.
And so you mentioned there the customer journey. So how have you seen that streamlining the operations through your platform, and how's that impacted the customer from the customer's point of view, but also from the operator side of things in terms of making their processes a lot easier as well? So what ways have you seen that help the journey and basically get more bookings for the operator at the end of it?
Absolutely. So let's first break this down into the question into multi-day and day, because they're very different in terms of pre-trip communication. For a multi-day operator, the biggest pain point is often arrival day, especially if the group's not traveling together into destination. And what historically happens is the tour operator has email communications with each of these guests. And at some point, it transitions over to the tour guide. And the tour guide is using their personal phone number to try to reach these guests. They don't know if they're on WhatsApp or SMS or email, but all of a sudden it becomes the tour guide's responsibility. And the tour operator kind of wipes their hands clean and says, hey, it's now your job, especially for adult operators. And making that into a seamless process has been very important for both the guest and for the operator, so that when that the flight's delayed, everyone's in sync. The guide knows when the customer lands, the office knows what's happening. If they need to meet the person at the next point, everyone is in sync. Then you think about a day tour operator, and you take that complexity and you multiply it by a factor of 100, because every day is arrival day for a day tour operator. People are coming in to the Louvre, I just saw one of our clients, Babylon, tons yesterday, 20, 30 different groups meeting at a place with poor Wi-Fi connectivity, which is at a statue outside the Louvre. Everyone needs to know which guide they need to look for, which person they need to look for. Well, they need to make sure if that message isn't read, it's delivered over an SMS. If the guest is running late, the guide is aware before they go into the Louvre, because once you go into the biggest museum in the world, you're never going to find the person who's coming. So It's just on day tour. It's a multitude of on a higher scale of this communication challenge. And you asked about kind of repeat bookings. If a guest has a good experience and a good time, you can now target them with repeat offers and different discount deals and cross sells in the same channel of communication that they've been using to chat with you. Number two, those communications can appear to come from the guide who they trust very much. And we all know that when that guide asks for a review, it's going to mean a lot more than coming from the company. So whether it's reviews or repeat bookings or saying, hey, did you know that this guide who you might like is going to be running another tour tomorrow? Do you want to join that experience? These are all very powerful things that can be automated and drive repeats.
Something I've noticed over the years, and I was guilty of this myself when I was both multi-day and day tour operator, all the communication would be very factual, as in logistic driven, where to meet, timings, names of guides, what to bring, what not to bring. But many of the guests are really looking to be, even though they've booked, they're looking forward to it. And the tour operators don't continue to inspire. They send the factual, hard stuff that the guest needs to know, 100% needs to know. But is there a communication journey that is much more interesting and much more motivating for the guest rather than just the hard facts?
On multi-day especially, yes, when you involve group chat. Day tours is going to be largely logistics, the hard facts of where to go, and then certainly before and after you can intersperse some fun communication with the guide. But a lot of that honestly, that fun stuff is going to be on the multi-day side of things, where you've got people sending lovely videos and content and maps to each other. When it comes to the day tour operators, we've tried to automate a lot of that, such as a group photo that's taken on the bus, sending it to everyone after the tour. The cooking class, getting recipes out to guests after that cooking class so everyone knows what it is they just made, having a group photo, having a list of local recommended restaurants in town to go to that the tour operator who you trust recommends. All sorts of these fun things, but it is certainly a lot more powerful over the course of many days.
I think that's spot on. I mean, yeah, in full disclosure, I'm a customer of Tour Optima, or at least one of my companies is. I don't really directly deal with it, except when I do, I discovered the opportunity to sort of expand the idea of what customer communication is, which is not just to make sure everybody's on the same page logistically returning from lunch, but it's an opportunity to play trivia. I used your app to host a photo contest, and what I had previously done whenever I'd host a photo contest online was Google Voice or WhatsApp, or I'd have them submit a form, a Google form that I had made, whatever it might be, a way of capturing all of those submissions from the guest. Same thing with lunch orders, dinner orders. My multi-day tour operator life is filled with logistics, trying to get a lot of information from a group into a single place. And what was kind of cool and what delighted the teachers that were along on the tour that I was operating, they loved suddenly seeing all of these photos come in from the students who were out and about, and it was delightful. So I feel like it's an opportunity. Communication is an opportunity to go above and beyond and use it for a way to enhance the tour and not just make sure it's running smoothly.
Agreed. Although smooth is number one priority, you can't deny that.
Yeah, I mean it's a hierarchy of needs, and you know there's a little bit of a question mark here, which is, when am I overburdening my guests with too many different apps and links and everything else, right? I think of, my early stages of being an operator. It was like everything was just mailed or communicated by an email or whatever. And as apps grew in our ecosystem, suddenly I realized I was asking my guests to download 3 different apps, one for the itinerary, one to join a WhatsApp group for communication. And it seems like what you've tried to do is look at the whole customer journey and simplify that. So what do you see as the customer journey? Like, how are you thinking about this journey that let's say, a day tour and a multi-day tour customer is on, and how are you simplifying that?
The first thing is the channel of communication becomes irrelevant. So in other words, whether someone's first communicating over email and then decides to communicate over SMS, it doesn't impact the communication history, and then communicates via the operator's own app. That full communication history should be present and preserved. Second thing that we see is 80% of the responses are coming back to the operator from mobile, whether that's in-app, SMS, or WhatsApp. SMS very heavily used among the Americans, the Canadians, WhatsApp, the Europeans. And we look at that response rate, and people view the SMS and WhatsApp communications as short form, and two, a conversation. So many times they'll send a series of messages, just like you're texting a friend. We don't fully form our thoughts, unlike an email. We're just saying, hey, running late, looking forward to seeing you soon, right? And these are three separate messages. They're not three separate tickets. They're three separate messages. And it is really important for operators when they think about SMS and WhatsApp, and everyone we work with makes this mistake, despite the fact that I personally tell them to do this: shorten your messages. If you're sending logistics messages, what is most important? Where's the meeting point? What's the time? Maybe a link to the voucher if they have a question. And operators always think, okay, my SMS should mirror my email. No, it should not mirror the email. SMS and WhatsApp is a completely separate form of communication. And that form of communication should be emoji heavy. It should be short. It should be fun. It should invite a conversation if needed. And certainly you don't want to say, are you ready to enjoy your day? Because the guest will say, yes, I'm ready. You don't need to have that responses, but you do need to think about what is going to get their attention, what is going to catch their attention, and they're not going to read a long email. But that long email is necessary for your legal constraints, right? Legally, you need to include your cancellation policy and your terms of service and all that good stuff. And you can link to that via a short link in a text, but that should not be the text. We've even seen operators try to include their terms of service and privacy policy in a text message. Do not do that.
Wow.
Benjamin, tour operators, like everybody else on the planet, love a good news story. So give us some examples of, you don't need to name the operators, but some clients you've worked with where they've had a communication issue, whether they knew it or not, and then Tour Optima has worked with them and it's got fixed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's no more complex environment. There are two complex environments out there. The first is Cancun, and the market of Cancun, where you've got people at a 200-mile radius being picked up from hotels. Some of them are at the security booth. Some of them have to be picked up in the lobby because the bus doesn't have access. And not only do they have to be picked up, they have to be picked up at a certain time within a certain window. And these are guests who, this is Cancun, so they're drinking the night before, they're having fun, they're partying, and you need to make sure they are out on time when the bus is there with time-stamped evidence of exactly where the bus is, when the bus is, that the bus driver was communicating with them in the lobby, because otherwise they're going to file a chargeback. We all know about the chargebacks there through Viator and Get Your Guide and Direct. So you need really documented evidence, and you need to make sure that guest the night before they've had 5 margaritas, have acknowledged that, hey, I need to be at this photo, this location at this time. I need to get there 10 minutes before. And we were, for Amigo Tours, for Sat Mexico, for other operators, actually able to reduce the lates and the no-shows 4x down to about 3%, which is, for Cancun, that's very, very good. It used to be about 14%. So that's one example of the importance of solid communications, and of course, leaving less people behind when you break up for the tour and you explore Chichen Itza and you got to get everyone back together. That's a whole nother example. Another example, though, that's very big for tour operators is the Coliseum. Because as we know, the Coliseum operates on timed entries. They need everyone's real name. So they need to know everyone's name. Otherwise, if you get, I've been there, you go with your tour operator and they randomly select a few people in the group. And if those names aren't on the official list, you don't get into the Coliseum. So number one, they need to collect everyone's names. And the operator doesn't want to do that at the time of booking, because the more information you collect at the time of booking, as you know, the more friction you create in the booking flow. So one of the things that solid communication allows you to do is automatically collect information about your guest post-booking. So you can do things like collect everyone's information and passports and that you need for the Coliseum. And the second thing is the Coliseum has ticket times. And we know this because this was in the news about operators getting fined all this money for buying tickets at the Coliseum. I mean, $20 million tour operators in Rome got fined, not related to us, but it shows you the competitive nature of ticketing at the Coliseum. So many times you need to move people to a half an hour before or later. And those people that you're moving are in a foreign country. They're in Italy, and they need to understand, A, that they're being moved, so they don't arrive too early or too late, and B, they need to accept that. And they need to accept it so that you don't get a chargeback. So all of these things these are two really kind of high volume examples of where communication not only helps the guest experience, but reduces the chargebacks and the issues that operators face.
I love these examples because these are pretty complex journeys. I remember your talk that you gave at Tourpreneur Connect in New York City back in February, and you actually had a couple of fantastic slides, which, with your permission, we'll share in the show notes, outlining, I guess you might call it, your ideal communication map across the customer journey, before the tour, during the tour, and after the tour. Could you give us that kind of ideal scenario, how you see it from your data, from working with all of these different operators, what that communication journey looks like?
Yeah, so it starts with the booking confirmation. And what's really important about the booking confirmation is A, that it's delivered through both email and SMS or WhatsApp. And the importance of delivering it through both desktop and mobile is that you open a channel of communication with the customer. And that way, before the tour, if the customer has a question, they're not calling the office. We know that. We know to open the channel of communication early. So that's really important. The second important thing is that if it's through an OTA, a lot of operators say, oh, the OTA is handling it. Well, they end up with the phone calls. They think the OTA is handling it. They end up with the phone calls. So what's really important is, even if it's booked through an OTA, to send a message through that extranet, introducing yourself, saying, hey, your booking's confirmed. We're the operator. We're Babylon. We're Amigo. We've got your booking. We're the local operator here. If you have any questions, reply to this message, and we can't wait to see you, and we're going to pick you up at your hotel, the La Fiesta Hotel. So that's really important as a booking confirmation. Then post booking, you can handle things like upsells. So someone has a large party. They might have a party of 6 people, and including a few kids, and they've booked it at least a month in advance. Maybe a private tour might be better for them. So maybe there might be an additional upsell opportunity for a private tour. Maybe there could be a flamenco show that takes place after the tour. They booked the afternoon tour, and there's something in the area that would pair very well with that experience. So that might be kind of post booking, 3 hours after the booking, before the tour. And then you've got reminders. So 24 hours before, what do we need to do? We need to remind the user 2 hours before. Very important reminder that your tour is about to begin, exactly where to be. That's the meeting point reminder. That's, hey, you can introduce yourself as if you're the tour guide, and here's the meeting point. And now at that 2 hour window, which we find works really best, it's the guest communicating about if they're late, if they're not gonna make the tour, if they've overslept. That's where you find out that information. That's really important to know. And you're finding it out through mobile messaging. You're not getting tons of phone calls in the office. And what happens? Well, what happens when the guest doesn't check in? How do you handle no-show? So all of that type of communication can be automated. And then post-tour, of course, surveys, feeling out, did they have a good time? Did they not? There's some debate about review screening to understand if someone didn't have a good time, to tackle it head on before they leave that 1-star review. And our belief is that it ultimately benefits all parties. If we can make a customer happy, if an operator can make a customer happy after the tour, if they didn't have such a good time, Ultimately, the OTA, the customer, and the operator all benefit. And if they did have a good time, we want them to share it on the platform of choice, or if they book through an OTA like Get Your Guide, directly through that OTA. And then, of course, lastly, tipping. Tipping the guide if you didn't get a chance to do so in person, and maybe some additional tours that an operator might offer in the future if the customer's in town for a few extra days. That's the traditional customer journey for a day tour operator.
So tour operators today are drowning in technology. Like, we survey them every now and again and ask for them to submit their technology stack. And it used to be 3, 4, 5 bits of technology, and now it's getting into 10, 15. We've got operators with 20 different pieces of technology in their stack. It's getting very complex. So that gets us to connectivity. What's Tour Optima's plan on how are you going to connect with all of these other pieces of technology that are core to an operator running their business? Because if you stay on the outside, it will hurt. It hurts your business. They like you to be connected to certainly the core part of the business, which is often their booking system.
How I think about our business is we're a communication version of their booking system. So we sync with the booking system. We have very deep partnerships with the booking systems. Ventrada, Boken, Fair Harbor, Zola, Resdi, Trexa, all these different booking systems. It's very important for us to know everything that's going on with every single booking, because your communication platform, when we think about communications, and for tour operators, our communication platform is organized around the concept of the manifest. Very different from a normal communication platform that's organized around tickets. So we think about communications as the manifest. That's actually the same way the booking system thinks about tour operations. They think about them as bookings, but I'm registered as a booking on a specific time with a specific tour guide, or on a specific departure date on a specific tour. And we serve as a visual representation, a communication system representation of that booking system, so that when an update is made to the booking, the customer changes their time, or the product changes, or the number of passengers change, or the tour guide changes, all of that information gets reflected in the communication system, and the appropriate communications go out. So when I think about our partnerships in the industry, our closest partnerships are the booking systems, and we have to work very, very closely with them and make sure that neither of us step on each other's toes.
Have you discovered any sort of best practices around, I know you mentioned the 2-hour pre-tour moment. What about the day before, 3 days before, 5 days before, in terms of kind of the upselling and the cross-selling? And I think of this in particular as so many people will maybe book that anchor experience 6 months out, and they want to make sure that they get the ticket for it, but then they leave a lot until the last few days, either before the tour or in destination. So how are you thinking about that period of selling, and do you have any best practices?
It is certainly important. There is a U-shaped, right, from the time of booking, and then when they're in destination, either they kind of plan in advance. A lot of people do plan their day to a T, kind of pretty much far out, and that's why the post-booking kind of 3-hour message is important. Hey, thanks for booking. If you want to book a second tour, either a discount or here's a good thing to pair it with. I wouldn't message too much in that window. I wouldn't take advantage of, hey, let's put a 7-day message and a 48-hour message, and just having one, just to remind them that you exist, to maybe say, hey, you're going to be in town. A great way to see the city is through our partner at Big Bus, or something that might actually benefit the users. What Eating Europe does, which is never seen other operators do this, is suggestions for around town, other places to eat, a playlist, a music playlist of things to do when you're in Rome. So not just making it a transactional experience, but providing value to the user as they go to the city, and then they say, oh, that was this tour operator who provided that value. They must know what they're doing. They must have an idea. And it's almost a softer sell than aggressively trying to sell it. The other thing to keep in mind is, of course, through the OTAs of Viator and Get Your Guide, a user can cancel 24 hours in advance free of charge. So you don't want to remind someone right before the cancellation window that, hey, you have this tour coming up with us. You might have forgotten about it, but now's the last chance to cancel. So maybe a little further out, and then within that 24-hour window, as soon as that hits, remind them.
You mentioned that you obviously you've got the connection with all the different booking platforms, etc., and you mentioned some of the bigger names there. Do you have any way of communicating with customers if they abandon the cart at any certain stage that you can then try to entice them back to make a booking? Does your system help with that side of things, with the connections with the booking platforms?
Absolutely. Not all of them support that. Ventrata does, Resdi does, a few others, Boken. So we can, if it's an on-hold booking, and not only if it's an on-hold booking, if it's an on-hold booking where we know that the user hasn't made another booking in the system, we don't want them to cancel out the other booking and then use the discount code to rebook. That's very important. So actually understanding, as if from a CRM perspective, what has this user booked, and using that to customize the communications, whether it's an on-hold or a cross-sell, is very important.
Nice.
So let's dive in to multi-day tours. How is that journey different? I love how you broke it down: pre-tour, during tour, post-tour. What's the best practices for that communication journey for multi-day operators?
Look, a lot of multi-day operators are legacy companies. They're operating on email. They're sending out a ton of emails before the tour with 60-page PDFs asking for all sorts of information. And look, ultimately, from the time of booking, you want to set someone up with an omni-channel flow. So requesting missing information ahead of time. At some point, T-minus 7 days before the tour, open up that, we provide a fully branded white labeled app, open up the group chat, open up the opportunity for the trip leader, tour guide, tour director, whatever the operator calls it, to reach out, send a blast to those users on their channel of communication, get them all into the same place. So really it's a continuum. It's to get that checklist checked off. So we have everyone's information, we have everyone's travel docs, passports, etc. And if people are missing it, they respond to a text in a way that they're not going to respond to page 50 of a 60-page PDF. And then getting them into the on-tour experience, getting them into the experience itself, getting them excited with the itinerary and photos. And then pre-tour, we just got a request from one of our clients at Flight Center Group to actually send the survey before the tour even ends. A lot of operators are sending it at the end of the tour. They're now they want to send it 2 days in advance, not just 24 hours in advance, because it still gives them a little more time to fix anything, to deal with the customer. And we're even recommending now mid-trip check-ins. So midway through the tour, how's everything going? If we know that they're going to be staying at a certain property and it's a high-end operator, how is it going? How's the room? How are your bikes? If it's a cycling operator, because it gives you time to still adjust, right? If a lot of operators, a lot of tour operators are delegating the actual on-trip experience completely to their on-the-ground guides, which is not a problem, but they lose the visibility of what's going on. They lose the idea that, hey, this customer might not be happy, or they're having an issue. And I understand that we trust our tour directors, we trust our guides, but maybe it could be handled in a different way if we're observing it in real time and we're observing what happens. And then, of course, post-tour with the surveys and the tips. Digital tipping is certainly an area of interest, and so is post-tour surveys and getting everyone to complete their survey.
Have you put any thought towards pre-booking communication? I know you're absolutely optimizing the post-booking communication, and there's an awful lot of work to be done on that. But the communication pre-booking is often more complex than the communication post-booking, because that's when the tour operator's in sales mode. The inquiries are coming in, particularly in multi-day. The inquiries are coming in from phone, they're coming in from email, they're coming in from WhatsApp, they're coming in from text, they're coming in from a whole Facebook Messenger. I know I had over 10 different communication channels coming in at my multi-day. I used a product called Messaging Bird. I think it's just called Bird now, to try and funnel all of these into one system. So have you put any thought into this pre-booking communication chaos that tour operators have to deal with?
It's funny you mentioned Bird, a great solution. We're on their competitor Twilio, who we've developed our own post-booking thread on Twilio. But two things. One, we do provide a fully native mobile app for our enterprise mid-sized tour operator clients. And that includes a full catalog of tours, of experiences for people to book their next adventure, explore, and also a channel for folks to inquire about that booking. When it comes to omni-channel messaging pre-booking, yes, we've done that. I would say that right now we're still focused on perfecting the post-booking experience. There's still so much that we want to accomplish there. And we know that each operator already has pretty ingrained sales flows that they're currently using. And we really, until we're fully ready to show that ROI on the increased sales flow, we're sticking to our area of expertise, which is the post-booking flows. And we also don't find that it's a detriment, because fundamentally, as a tour operator, I want to segregate those two. I want to make sure I capture the customer, and then after I've captured them, that that's not distracting. They're now signed up, so it's not distracting from the sales team. Sales tools are a whole different beast. Not that we don't want to go there, not that we don't want to tackle it, but it is a whole different beast.
There's two customer journeys happening. There's one which is, well, there's two journeys happening. There's the customer journey that's outward and facing the customer, where they're messaging. And then there's the operations journey below, that sits below it, which is all of the internal teams figuring out how to manage what is getting booked and then where to go. And these two interact, and I don't see enough technology helping them interact better. The tour director, of course, on a multi-day tour, but also the people booking hotels, handling requests that might come in through an SMS early on, a dietary restriction, but then also that point where what's been sold or what's been proposed turns real. It needs to be booked because you've got enough customers and you need to start messaging to them. So how are you balancing or thinking about, just as you build out your app or your platform, that interactivity between what a customer is interacting with on a comm side, but then also taking that and delivering the right tour product for who is ultimately traveling on that manifest?
Yeah, and that goes back to Peter's point. So when we think about the post booking, we're thinking about the internal chat as well. So we have internal chats, different roles, an unlimited number of roles between customer service and office and operations and drivers and vendors. So we have a whole vendor platform where the vendor can know who signed up for what different dishes and dietary preferences. That's what we're really focused on. And then how does that all interact with the customer interaction? So they are different channels. We don't want customers having access to the internal chat channels, but we also want to make sure that the drivers don't have access to the guest locations if they're independent contractors. So all sorts of nuances.
It's absurd. Like, it's beguiling the directions you could go. I can think of, for example, a scaled food tour operator where suddenly the restaurant is able to have the app and see live who is coming that day, prepare the food, just cutting out all of this back and forth BS that exists in our day jobs.
That actually, so we have a basic system now for alerting the vendors and alerting the restaurants over messaging. And what's coming is a full-fledged portal where the restaurant can actually see a week out live the people in each booking, the dietary preferences, the dishes that are ordered, and of course the dishes that are prearranged in one time slot are completely different from the other time slot. So it's really important for the restaurant and the staff to know what to prepare for which group, who's coming at what times, who's ordered the drinks, who hasn't, all sorts of stuff.
There is a really easy solution for that. It's well known in this market. Book Europeans and there'll be no dietary requests. Book US customers and there'll be 1,000 dietary requests.
Or segment by state. If you only book guests from Wisconsin and Ohio, trust me, they eat meat. If you book Californians and New Yorkers, that's when it gets annoying as a New Yorker.
So the data of that is incredible from a marketing point of view, just thinking out of the box, just from a marketing perspective. Having that data and being able to know what people are eating and drinking and all that sort of stuff, just for advertising and everything else, that's quite powerful. Very powerful.
Speaking of which, Chris, I know you're always obsessed with GDPR, so walk us through what your concerns are or thoughts are around using this tool across Europe.
Yeah, no, if anything, we all know data's, from a marketing agency's perspective and a marketer's perspective, having more data is always a good thing from our point of view, because you're able to make more informed decisions, and it's getting harder and harder to do that. But from what I've been hearing so far, Benjamin, with your platform, you'll be able to claw back some of that data back to help operators and to help marketing agencies figure out what they need to do at certain stages up maybe more accurately, because you are capturing some of that stuff, as we've just heard. So have you seen any benefits that operators have taken advantage of already, being able to have that extra data in terms of how they actually sell their tours and maybe even how they design their tours or how they do their own marketing strategies going forward?
Yeah, I think one of the holes right now in the industry is you're getting customers who are booking on Viator, Direct, Get Your Guide, and people don't know really where they book. They go online, they book the tour. They don't. Am I booking direct? I was just having a conversation with a friend who had booked tons of tours on Viator. He didn't even know. He just no. I mean, even Viator's brand, which we think of as very strong, it's people are looking for an experience. They book that experience. So understanding and piecing together from the name, from the phone number, who the customer, like the customer level, not the booking level, is something that we've tried to make a big push to do. Because if we can compile the idea that, okay, someone's booked multiple tours, one through Head Out, one through Viator, one through Direct, it's the same customer. Here's what they're going to be doing in destination. And now here's what else we should sell them. So a company that we work with, many operators we work with, Towns of Italy, Crown Tours, throughout Italy and beyond, and Amigo Tours and Fat Tire. And a lot of these operators might have the concept of kind of tour packages or regions or groups of tours that are kind of similar. And that if someone books these types of tours, they might be interested in these other types of tours or these other types of experiences. And if someone has purchased an upgrade and they've already gotten the e-bike, they might be someone who might be receptive to another type of premium experience. If someone books a family tour, we see this a lot. People book a family tour, they don't read it. 2 adults in the booking, 3 adults in the booking. Proactively, well, did you intend to book that family tour? Or did you mean to book our regular tour? And a lot of times they meant to book the regular tour. They just didn't read the fact that it was for families. So yes, in terms of quantifiable data, what we view as a good cross-sell rate, meaning a strong cross-sell rate, if an operator can effectively take this data and remarket, is about 6%, right, through messaging. A good upsell rate, meaning upselling an additional experience into the tour that you've already booked. So adding on the lunch tasting menu with the wine in Napa Valley and not going out on your own, is about 15%. Even among high value experiences, because people have already allocated that time for that activity. So upgrading the wine package at the winery tasting in Florence when they go out to a day trip from Florence is a lot easier of an upsell to sell that package of food and appetizers and an increased wine package than it is to sell another experience the next day that they might have already booked out. But those are the numbers that I think a lot of operators should shoot for, regardless of what platform they use to deliver messaging, 6% and 15%.
What you just said there, I actually did that myself not that long ago. I was booking, it was actually for my brother-in-law's birthday. I wanted to take him to the football team that we support, or soccer as you guys would say it, Glasgow Celtic. So we took him for a tour around that. Pete's having a shake because that's his rival team. So we took him for a tour around that, but we did the upsell of adding on the meal on the back of it as we were there. So we thought, why not? We'll just go and thing. So we did exactly the same thing as you're saying. And you're right in terms of saying most people, or not most, but a lot of people don't realise the booking platform or the OTA, sorry, that they're actually booking through. No, I remember me and Pete, I was meeting up with Pete one time and we saw he noticed on ScotRail. No, you went through, bought his ticket on ScotRail and then it was, okay, book experiences on the end of it. And then it was very small writing that this was from Get Your Guide type of thing. So it's a lot of people just don't realise because they're so integrated with other systems as well. So it's true that you don't really know who you're booking with these days.
What I would like is a feature on Slack to mute Pete and Chris the minute they start talking about football. One of the best communication experiences I've had lately was when I took a tour in New Orleans. It was New Orleans architecture tours. Now it's just NOLA tours. But what I loved was that morning I got a text message from the guide introducing themselves, telling me what to look for, a link again to the map location. But then also I got the weather report. They said it's going to get rainy and make sure you pack an umbrella, which is great because we all have vacation brain on. And so none of us are like thinking about that stuff the way we should. I thought that was really lovely. I just felt cared for. And frankly, every bit of that could be automated, couldn't it?
It probably was. I mean, I don't know. You'd have to ask your tour guide. But
well, now I'm doubting. I thanked her for her message and everything. No, I think no, I had asked her. They were part of their job. They were going and texting that individual note to every tour guest that day.
Wow. Yep. A lot of operators do that, and it's great to automate it, provided that the guides are on board. Right. And that's another important thing. So the guides either could be or could not be on board. Either you could send automated messages as if they appear to come from the tour guide. And if the customer responds, then the office needs to respond in accordance. Or you could do what some operators do, which is within that 2-hour window, within that morning of, now it's allocated to the tour guide with oversight from the office. So if that tour guide is not being paid until the tour starts, the office is happy to hop in. But there are some instances where it's a museum tour where the guide does want to understand what pieces of art the customer's interested in seeing. Are you interested in Impressionists? And that might even be the night before they want to find that out. So yeah, very important.
It sets the guide up for success. I mean, I spent many years as a guide, and I would have loved that automated push notification that says, by the way, these are the special requests of the guests today, because usually I resented having to spend my time going into some stupid company's portal that they thought was so cool and it was bad, and have to like figure out the manifest and look at special requests and then make a note. It's just the convenience of it. If it's just on the company white labeled app and it's pushed to me at the right time, right before the tour, I'd be delighted to have that information.
Right. The only pushback that you do have, and it happens not frequently, but late guides. So the more you monitor your guides, this is good for the tour operator, not as good for the guides. You happen to know if people are waiting I guarantee if someone's at the meeting point 10 minutes before and the guide's not there and the guides messaged them previously, they're messaging.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Benjamin, always like to ask builders, take your head out of your own company at the moment, forget about Tour Optima. What are you seeing overall in technology as we stand today, and what are you forecasting going forward? How is technology going to impact tour operators, ignoring your own company?
So it's hard to ignore our own company when I think of AI. And I know everyone's talking about it, so I really should bring it up, which is, as a part of communications, and we're still getting our feet wet. We launched an AI-based product. We're not yet allowing it in all cases to respond to guests, but I do think that this is going to dramatically reduce customer service costs for tour operators long term. I mean, reduce their calling center staffs, reduce the volume. So that is one of the trends that we know. We have to adapt to that, and we want to. But it is a larger industry trend, and everyone that we speak to is asking about it. And that goes back to sales as well, introducing AI into the sales funnel, into the post-booking funnel, into everything. So that's number one. And I would say that number two, it is the idea of a 360. And again, it's really hard to take us out of it, but I do think the idea of 360 profiles is for multi-day too. A lot of large operators that we speak to that are established, major companies, don't have 360-degree customer profiles. They don't always know the identities of all the travelers on their tour ahead of time. They just know that the agency booked it on behalf of 5 people, and I think that will get resolved. We're certainly trying to help, but it is a challenge that the industry faces.
When you say 360, because we're all in the tour industry, we tend to focus just within tours and activities, multi-day and day tours. But 360 is really the whole travel industry. Where are people staying? What airlines are they using to fly or trains to do? It's their whole actual customer profile tells you a story about every customer when you can put these whole bits together. And luckily the hotels, and luckily or not luckily, they're way ahead of us with data. They have a lot more data than the flights, a lot more data. And we tend to ignore that, but all of that tells a story as well about the customer.
Imagine he's got traveler location data as they make their way through the destination. So we know where they're going. We know where the demand is. I mean, theoretically, at a certain point, you can build product off the back of just understanding customer patterns, customer behavior. You can be responsive to their real life behavior and design your business around it to meet them where they're at, what they need. Beguiling and interesting and fascinating. And we could talk another hour about this, but we will leave it at that. Ben, thanks for these insights. We're going to share, if you're okay with it, those 2 customer journey maps that you shared at Tourpreneur Connect in the show notes, because that's a really nice template for any operator here just to begin thinking about their customer communication journey. There's a customer journey, but there's all these different layers to it. How are you marketing to them? How are you selling to them? But along that path is communication. I can't even say it. But Ben, how can our audience communicate with you?
The easiest way is to go on to our website at touroptima.com or email me directly at Ben, B-E-N, at touroptima.com, and I respond and read every single piece of email, even if you just want to chat and ask for advice. I get that all the time. Feel free to reach out, and more than happy to personally respond.
You heard it, 18,000 Tourpreneur members. Ben will personally solve all your tour business problems. Just email him directly. Thanks. This has been fascinating. We appreciate it. We'll share much more information on tourpreneur.com. And thank you for joining us, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.